Analog Orange from the Annoying Orange versus Alternate Gabriel from Mandela Catalog. Two beings who replace their gods and pretty much represent evil incarnate, with the world under their eye, and they see it as nothing more but their endless playground. But between these two false godly beings, who is the true overseer of all? Let's find out. Starting with Analog Orange, this entity is one of the many copies of the Annoying Orange, and one of the many replacements of Orange if the current Orange is killed. However, unlike the other Annoying Orange copies, he wasn't quite the same. He was less annoying, more psychotic. He wanted control, and he would get that by any means. Analog Orange has a variety of different attributes that make him dangerous because, unlike Annoying Orange, who seems to accidentally summon objects that end up killing fruits, Analog Orange does it intentionally and has no qualms with killing at all, with him being able to take whatever person he killed's attributes, memories, and abilities. And while how powerful he was beforehand is unknown, it was stated he was the most powerful food in his domain, and after he killed Danebo, which was considered their god, he gained a variety of powers and abilities. He is able to output a black liquid which absorbs and burns everything it comes in contact with. He can multiply himself, summon minions, warp his body to almost any degree, create completely indestructible metals, make barriers that no one can pass through, can seemingly cause instant decay in others, travel to other dimensions, create entire dimensions, and warp reality outright. This makes him pretty much unstoppable to everyone else in the kitchen, with no one else really standing much of a chance. But let's see how his opponent fares. On the other hand, we have Gabriel, or otherwise known as Alternate Gabriel. As it truly is, this angel is no savior, although very little is fully understood. Although what we do know is that somehow, in some way, he blocked the people of Mandela counties and potentially the world's connection to God, with even theories that he just outright replaced God. But in terms of things this being can do, very little is fully known. But from what we've seen, he can fly, travel between domains of existence. It seemingly creates copies of people called alternates, which are made to replace the respective person and inflict a disease called MAD, which drives a person to insane from the forbidden knowledge to the point of ending their own life. And it appears every alternate can inflict this. Gabriel also seems to just be able to cause people to disappear outright based on what the intruder can do, and also seems to include tech manipulation, basically also from what the intruder can do. He also seems like he's able to cause instant death in a person, like how he did with Dave, basically gouging his eyes out without even touching him directly. It also seems like he has the ability to resurrect people. But from what we do know of Gabriel, he is a replacement, and one to make us suffer. He's the truth you don't want to know, but he is always there, watching. But let's see how he fares against an opponent with similar ideals and characteristics. Now, this is a bit of a tough one since there are several things we need to figure out first before we can fully determine this, but let's start with intelligence and experience. And this gets really interesting. Analog has the knowledge of thousands, if not millions, of fruits, and has the knowledge of Danebo, which is effectively the god of their domain, having complete knowledge of the kitchen verse. However, there are things that do make me pick Gabriel here. Gabriel's kind of whole deal is that he has forbidden knowledge and knowledge that most don't want. I mean, in the first video, he also says he will fool the shepherds, meaning he's definitely tricky, and he literally fooled an entire society and potentially the whole world that God would help them. And he is the one in control. Analog, as we said, isn't dumb, but he is sometimes a little over arrogant. And he also doesn't usually think things out very fully. I mean, he literally made a indestructible metal to contain Annoying Orange in, but for some reason he made it so indestructible that not even his own magic could break it. He also seems to have quite a few issues with anger that makes him aggressive to the point where sometimes he doesn't really think about what he's doing before doing it. Like how he kept attacking the people who were trying to fix his teeth and killing them. So, in practice, while Analog should be incredibly smart, his actions kind of show he can be, well, kind of dumb sometimes. So, Gabriel pretty easily wins the intelligence advantage, and this would also be the case for experience, which is kind of a no brainer. Analog Orange was only God since 2017, and since he was defeated recently, meaning he had an 8-year domain, while Gabriel has been around since the Shepherds, which is at least 2,000 years, and he most likely was around even longer than that since he was influencing events between Adam and Eve, which can seemingly range from 55,000 years ago to 120,000 years ago. So Gabriel definitely holds the edge in this category. Now we have their abilities, which is probably the most complicated thing in this debate. Analog Orange has way more direct cases of power, with his wider variety of proven abilities, while Gabriel is way more unknown in terms of scaling, or abilities. But let's take a look at a few things that can be important. First of all, both of them are spiritual beings, so yes, they can interact with each other. Second of all, the most important way to figure this out is to go step by step and see what Gabriel can do and see if Analog Orange can do anything about it. Starting with Gabriel's abilities to make someone die without touching them. Analog Orange would most likely not be very affected by this at all, since the guy can already destroy his own body and just come back, so there's no real reason to believe he would die from this. Also, it is stated that Analog Orange isn't actually bound by the concepts of life and death. So it's most likely killing him in this way probably wouldn't really do that much. Now for Gabriel's technological manipulation. Could this affect Analog Orange's world? I mean, it isn't a TV after all. Well, that's kind of where things get even more complicated. While Analog Orange's existence is in TV, apparently, based on what we see at the end of Annoying Orange, everything in it was canon. This can be proven by the fact Orange still has Analog's powers at the end, which means the event still happened, and Orange actually seems kind of worried that keeping the tape around will lead to problems. This show Analog is still a threat to the domain of the kitchen. Now for the actual tech manipulation itself, it would not remove him outright, and it actually might be even worse for Gabriel, since, well, Analog Orange seems to have control over everything in the domain, and any interference can be traced by him, which is evident like when Pear, Orange, and Grapefruit interfered with Analog Oranges with the Horcruxes. And Analog had the ability to understand that something was happening and was able to go straight to the source. Now we get to the question, would MAD work on Analog? Now I should have mentioned this before in the minions section, but I think it could work on most of the minions, since they don't really have the same mindset and shouldn't have any reason why they wouldn't be affected by this. Although I don't think it would work very well on Analog himself. Here's why. For one, Analog Orange actively seeks knowledge. His whole thing is killing something and absorbing their memories and knowledge, meaning he would be exposed to MAD basically just from killing basic alternates, which at first might seem like a good thing for Gabriel since he's exposed and takes himself out, but that's actually not the case. People have survived MAD in Mandela Catalog. They did this from seemingly seeking that knowledge. But also, why would the knowledge matter to Analog? He makes the truth of his own world. Why would he really care when he could just change the truth to match whatever he wants? He already has the knowledge of God, or at least his, so I don't think Analog is going to be directly taken out from this. Now, in terms of what Analog Orange can do, well, definitely his basic tricks would only really be useful against alternates, since Gabriel is kind of at a whole different domain, and physical attacks wouldn't always work on Gabriel, or at least from what we've seen, that doesn't really matter that much. But Gabriel could definitely get past the dimensional difference if Analog ever tried getting away, since Gabriel seems to be able to travel between domains anyways. And also, he could get past any barrier that Analog set up simply by just going past the barrier through teleportation. But I think the most important thing to figure out if Analog Orange's powers would work on Gabriel is to figure out how powerful these characters are. So let's get into that category. Now, in terms of power, this is absolutely the trickiest part to figure out. Well, for Gabriel. For Analog Orange, it's actually kind of simple, but let's start with Gabriel since he's a little bit tougher to figure out. Gabriel is an interesting case for several reasons, as we've seen no real direct feats of powers other than him killing a human, one kind of directly, but we can get some ideas for how powerful he is based on how the story presents him. As the idea that he replaced God, and we know he did something to Jesus and contained him somewhere, would maybe make him somewhat comparable to God, even though if this is an exact comparison, it is very rough to say, because since he never really does anything that shows he would scale to the same level, and his influence on Earth is mostly restricted to Mandela County, but let's just assume for the sake of this that he has the fullest max we could possibly give him. With him being able to replace God, he would at least be somewhat comparable. And since God created the universe, we can actually get him to universal metas, although again, this is hard to say since he doesn't really have as much direct influence as God seemingly did. And we're not scaling to real life Christianity because that would be kind of disingenuous and wouldn't really make much sense since this is a fictional world and Christianity is, well, a real world concept. And it didn't seem that Gabriel got this way through just power, but also fooling others, like how he had to fool Adam and Eve and the shepherds in order to get to the position where he could have this so called power. And while Gabriel isn't probably exactly at the level I gave him, for the sake of this argument, we will say he is universal and maybe universal plus if we want to make a huge assumption and assume that he somehow took over the heavens as well, since no other angels seem to come down, but this is such an assumption that you might not want to actually use this. Now for Analog Orange's scaling, this is really absurd, but it's also pretty direct. In the last episode of Analog Orange series, we know he's at least universal, because he says that he controls the entirety of the kitchen verse. This is important because the kitchen verse is filled with not just one universe, but many alternate dimensions, all of it being something he controls. We can see this through videos like Land Beyond the Kitchen, or the several crossover videos, or even one video in the Analog Orange series itself being Dimension VHS, which just proves that there are more dimensions out there, and we even see Pear and Grapefruit visit a bunch of them in one of the episodes itself. Not to mention, Analog can just outright destroy these domains anytime he wants and recreate them, making the annoying orange kitchen verse probably much larger than the Mandela Catalog universe, at least to a provable degree. Meaning that Analog Orange has anywhere from multi-universal all the way up to multiversal levels of power, meaning he absolutely has the power advantage here. Not to mention their survivability, with Gabriel having almost no feats at all in terms of survivability, and while he can revive others, it doesn't seem like he's able to revive himself, at least not with a proven track record. But if we assume that he can survive the punishment that other alternates face, he can survive quite a bit of punishment without a face, missing a head outright, or just pretty severe bodily damage as a whole. But as we said before, Analog Orange has a much better healing ability, and provably so. He can melt his entire body and come back. And as we said before, he is not bound by the concepts of life and death. While yes, Gabriel might be the same, at least Analog Orange has the direct statement of actually having this. And while he did technically die in the end of the series, Analog's power was so immense that he ended up taking himself out in the end because he couldn't properly think. However, his essence still remained because we literally see his spirit come out when Orange burns the tape. Now, it's unknown if this fire killed him in the end, but we know his presence was still around in the tape after he was defeated, meaning that he would have still been alive. And no, Gabriel could not just destroy the tape directly, since Analog would have to be overpowered first before he would even get the opportunity to even do something like this. So, Analog Orange is not only more powerful, but is going to take a lot more punishment and a lot more work to take out than the other way around. And yeah, that's going to be a big problem for Gabriel here. Now, since speed doesn't really matter as much in this case because both are technically aware of everything that happens and oversees all, and kind of just appear anytime they want and anywhere, let's get down to our final verdict. This is a very interesting fight, but in my opinion, Analog Orange just has too many advantages overall. He has more ability, way more direct showings of not only these abilities and power, compared to Gabriel's very few direct showings and not really any true power feats other than assumptions. Analog Orange also just having better minions, and the fact is he can just copy himself over and over again, and he can kind of just take out the alternates by not even doing anything before, like I didn't even mention this before, but he can just make things rot. There's no counter that the alternates have to something like this, if he even needs them, like how Mistletoe has thousands, if not millions, of times of a power advantage and being so much faster just by running into them. Even if the alternates could inflict the minions with Mad, it's not entirely that good of a way of taking them out, since most of them will be too busy in combat to fully focus on what they're saying, and the alternates would have to overpower them respectively or get close enough for them to hear without being blocked by amount of chaos. And again, Analog completely counters this because that knowledge wouldn't really affect him. Gabriel's shown hacks also just doesn't really help him much. As we stated before, Analog has a lot of things that shows he most likely just counters this. Gabriel is definitely smarter, though, and more experienced, since his whole thing is how he fooled humanity into thinking God is still there and he would hear their pleas for help. Being around for thousands of years longer, but it doesn't really matter all too much when he's not dealing with an opponent that he's ever dealt with in any kind of similar degree before. Even Analog has better combat experience, and even before he had his god powers, he killed a being who was already a god. And while Analog's temper can certainly get the better of him, and it does affect how he fights sometimes, he's just way too powerful here, and Gabriel doesn't really have the annoyance that Annoying Orange was able to create in this type of scenario. And Gabriel wouldn't necessarily have the full knowledge to understand how this works. Even if he did, again, as we stated, Analog could just take him out before he could do anything, and he has no reason to just keep Gabriel around in any taunting sense like he did with Orange. Especially since Gabriel doesn't have any good way of taking him out that good in comparison to what Analog can do. So while, as I said before, this is certainly an interesting fight, but if I were to say who would end up winning between these false gods, only one became a true god. In my personal opinion, that is Analog Orange, and he would just be too much for Gabriel to handle. Analog Orange wins.